The first time Thea Waller dragged her chair around to my side of the desk, I forgot which database I had open. One moment I was Silas Horn, 29, audience analytics lead at a content strategy startup in Austin, Texas, doing the exact job I'd been hired to do. The next, I was a man staring at a spreadsheet like it had switched languages because Thea had rolled her chair directly beside mine, close enough that her sleeve touched my arm, and was now pointing at my second monitor with the focused calm of someone who had done this 100 times and hadn't once noticed it was dismantling my concentration. Your engagement drop happens on the scroll gate, not before it, she said. I nodded like a reasonable adult. You're looking at the wrong variable, she continued. I looked at the screen, eventually. She turned her head, caught my eyes not quite on the data, and tilted hers. You good? Completely focused. On the scroll gate. She studied me for a moment with the expression of someone who had just won something and was choosing not to collect it yet. Then she looked back at the screen. Third column. Dwell time before the drop. I found the column. I had been looking directly past it for 4 minutes. Thea didn't say anything else about it, which was somehow worse than if she had. That was 8 months ago. I was still thinking about it. I worked at Signal Co., a 12-person operation that helped brands figure out why their content was failing and then charged them well to fix it. My job was the data side, audience behavior, engagement patterns, where readers stopped, what made them stay. I was reasonably good at it. I had spreadsheets color-coded in ways that embarrassed me to describe at parties. Thea was our senior content strategist. She'd joined 6 months before I did, which meant she already knew where the good coffee was and which client calls to escape before they hit the 40-minute mark. Her job was to take what I found and turn it into a story that didn't put anyone to sleep. She was better at her job than I was at mine, and I was not bad at mine. The problem with Thea Waller was this: she was sharp in the specific way that made you want to be in the same room as her when she was thinking. She argued with data the way other people argue with friends, not to win, but because she genuinely cared about being right. She listened when you talked, not to form a reply, but because the words mattered to her. She remembered that I took my coffee black and once left a to-go cup on my keyboard with a note that said, "Your 3 p.m. looked dire from across the office," and I kept that note in my desk drawer, for reasons I was not prepared to examine. She also had this habit of pausing in my doorway for 4 seconds before deciding whether to come in, like she was solving something internally before she committed. I noticed this. I noticed it the way I noticed patterns in data. Not because I went looking, but because once you see a thing enough times, it becomes part of how you read the room. I had rules about not making it weird. I had learned those rules the hard way at my first job, where I'd misread a situation and spent 4 months being the cautionary tale in someone else's team lunch story. So I kept my observations to myself. I did not read into the doorway pauses. I did not analyze the fact that she laughed at my dry remarks about statistical significance when most people just blinked at them. I was professional. I was competent. I was lying to myself, but I was doing it with real commitment. Thea walked in on a Tuesday morning with her laptop and a look that meant she'd already solved 3 problems and was working on a 4th. Your dwell chart from last week, she said, dropping into the chair across from me. I've been looking at it wrong. You've been looking at it for 3 days. And now I'm looking at it correctly. The audience isn't dropping because the content is boring. They're dropping because we're giving them what they expect before they feel the need to keep going. I looked at her. That's backwards. It's usually backwards with me. I tried not to smile, failed. She pushed her laptop across my desk. When we remove the predictable opener, the safe thesis, the reassuring hook, dwell time goes up. Not because people are more engaged, because they're uncertain. They need to keep reading to feel settled. You want to make people uncomfortable on purpose. I want to make them curious on purpose. She looked up. There's a difference. A small one. You want to talk small differences? She nodded at my coffee mug, which read data-driven decisions in what my sister called my saddest professional font. How long have you had that? It was a gift. From who? Me, to myself. She stared at it for a full beat. Silas. It was a low point. The mug or the gifting? The gifting. The mug's actually excellent. She laughed, quiet, real, and I looked back at her graph before I could do something inadvisable. That was how things went with us. She'd land in my office with an idea and leave me with 3 more problems than I'd started with, plus the problem of having spent 40 minutes with her and not wanting it to stop. She challenged things I'd already settled. She asked follow-up questions when most people took the first answer and left. She was the only person in the office who could make a discussion about content funnels feel like it mattered. I thought about asking her to lunch several times. I always found a reason why the timing was off. I was very good at finding reasons. Then Ramona gave us no choice about any of it. It was a Thursday afternoon. Thea and I had been in the small conference room by the east windows for an hour, working on a deck for North Park Media, a regional lifestyle brand that had hired us to overhaul their content funnel. The pitch was tomorrow at 10. Our usual presenter, Tanner, was supposed to walk the client through it. At 3:47, Tanner texted Ramona that his mother had fallen. He was driving to San Antonio and he was sorry. Ramona appeared in the doorway 4 minutes later with the expression of someone who had run the math and didn't love the answer. Tanner's out. Family emergency. I looked at Thea. Thea looked at me. You two built the strongest sections, Ramona said. You know it better than anyone else here. I need you both in that room tomorrow. Thea nodded first. What time is the pre-call? 8:30. Conference room A. Ramona left. Thea turned back to the screen. We split the sections by logic. You take data and funnel performance. I'll carry the narrative and campaign positioning. The closing? She thought about it. Together, feels stronger. I agreed, it did feel stronger. That was the problem. We stayed until 6:30. By the time we packed up, the office had gone quiet in the way a small open-floor startup does when everyone's gone home, and the only sounds are the HVAC and someone's phone charging on a desk. We walked out together, and the night air was warm in the specific way Austin October evenings get, still holding the day's heat, just barely releasing it. Thea stopped at the corner. Do you eat actual food for dinner, or do you treat meals like a checkbox? I eat real food. Define real. Whatever's closest to the office. She gave me the look. There's a taco place 3 blocks up. Come on. We sat at a small table near the window, with paper trays between us, and the easy rhythm of 2 people who'd spent too many hours in the same room to need to fill silence. She talked about growing up in Raleigh, about moving to Austin for a job she'd left after a year. I talked about 6 months in Chicago before deciding I was a Texas person, whether I'd planned on it or not. It felt, despite all my careful rules, like a date. She slid the bigger of her 2 tacos onto my tray without thinking. I didn't say anything for a moment. You always do that, I said finally. She paused. Do what? Give me the bigger one. She looked at the trays like she'd caught herself doing something she hadn't meant to reveal. You noticed that. I notice patterns. She picked up her water, said quietly, I notice things too. The air shifted. Subtle, the kind of shift that doesn't announce itself with any sound. She was looking at her cup. I was looking at her. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then my phone lit up on the table. Unknown number. Thea's been in talks with Paragon. She won't be here next quarter. I read it twice, then a third time. Thea was watching me. What? I handed her the phone. Her expression changed in a way I couldn't fully read. Not guilt, not quite surprise. More like someone who'd been expecting a conversation and hadn't yet figured out how to begin it. She set the phone face down. Is it true? I asked. A pause. It's complicated. I'd heard that before. Different people, different contexts. It had never meant what I'd hoped. Okay, I said. I kept my voice level. Silas, you don't owe me an explanation. She looked at me directly. What if I want to give you one? I waited. Paragon reached out 2 weeks ago, she said. Content director role. It's a real opportunity. She folded her hands on the table. I haven't said yes. But you haven't said no. No, a quiet beat. They want an answer by Friday. Tomorrow, after the pitch. I finished what was left of my food without tasting it. Thea watched me with the expression of someone running a calculation without all the variables. Say something, she said. What do you want me to say? The honest thing. I looked at her. I want you to stay. I know that's not a sufficient reason for you to turn down a director role, and I'm trying to be rational about that. A pause. Both things are true at the same time. She didn't answer immediately. Then she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Not an accident, not a question. Just her hand, warm and deliberate, resting on top of mine. I notice you, she said softly, in case that was ever unclear. I turned my hand over and held hers. It was extremely unclear, I said. I was working very hard to convince myself it wasn't happening. Her mouth curved. I know. It was the least convincing thing about you. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced down. Whatever she saw removed the warmth from her face in the time it takes a screen to light up. I looked before I could stop myself. A name at the top, Pierce W. The preview text read, "Don't sign anything with Signal tomorrow. We need to talk about Silas first. We need to talk about Silas first." She turned the phone face down. Didn't meet my eyes immediately. "Who's Pierce?" I asked. "Former supervisor," carefully, "at the agency I worked at before Signal. He knows I'm presenting with you tomorrow." Yes, a breath, because I told him. I sat back slightly, she noticed. "It's not what it looks like," she said. "What does it look like?" "Like I've been keeping him informed." Her jaw tightened. "I haven't," he calls. "Sometimes I pick up because it's easier than not picking up." And Paragon. Her eyes stayed on the table. Pierce consults for them. The taco place felt very small. I put some cash down for both of us and stood. Thea watched me. "Are you leaving?" "No, I need some air. You can come if you want." She came. We walked 2 blocks without speaking. The evening was still warm. Music leaked from a bar on the cross street. Live guitar. Somebody playing well. Normal Austin Friday Eve. Everything exactly as it should be, except the thing tightening in my chest. "Tell me what happened," I said, with Pierce. She exhaled slowly. "At Harwick, the agency before Signal, Pierce was my department head. He pushed for my promotion early on. I was grateful. She pulled her jacket tighter despite the warmth. Then I found out what the gratitude was supposed to buy him. Which was my signature on a campaign targeting people with recently discharged debt. Content designed to look like financial advice. Genuinely helpful on the surface. Budgeting tips, credit recovery guides. Underneath, it funneled scared people toward high-interest credit products that would put them right back under. She looked at me. He called it meeting the audience where they are. I called it predatory. I stopped walking. "I killed it," she said. "Went directly to the client, showed them what the content was actually doing. They pulled the contract." A pause. "Pierce told everyone I'd gone rogue. That I was too emotional to handle complex accounts. That I'd sabotaged the agency because I couldn't take correction." "That's not what happened." "No." Flat quiet, but he was very good at telling a story. We'd stopped near a small park off the main drag, benches under live oaks, the air smelling faintly of cedar. A dog trotted past on a leash and regarded us briefly. "He's been calling since I got to Signal," she said. "When Paragon reached out, I told myself maybe the distance had made things professional, maybe enough time had passed." She looked down. "Then he texted you about me and I knew nothing had changed." I turned to face her fully. "You protected people who couldn't protect themselves from content that was engineered to look like help while extracting from them," I said. "That is not too principled. That is the entire job. The actual job, the one that matters." She was quiet. "Pierce didn't call you difficult because you were wrong," I said. "He called you difficult because you were inconvenient to him." Something shifted in her face. Not tears, but something like the relief that comes before them. The kind of exhale a person makes when they've been holding something upright for a long time and someone finally offers to help set it down. "I've spent 3 years," she said quietly, "wondering if maybe some version of what he said was right, that I protect ideas at the cost of outcomes, that I'm not practical enough for real work." "Thea," she looked at me. "He told you that story because it kept you second-guessing yourself instead of trusting what you know." I held her gaze. And I'm not waiting for his version before I believe yours. She reached out and caught the front of my jacket, just held it. This is the part where I normally deflect, she said. You don't have to. She didn't. She stepped forward and I met her, and the kiss was quiet and certain and nothing at all like something I'd been pretending not to want. Her hand stayed on my jacket. Mine found her shoulder. The live oaks were indifferent. The dog was already gone. When we stepped back, she kept her forehead close to mine for a moment. We have an 8:30 pre-call, she said. I'm aware. Just establishing priorities. Fully established. She laughed. Real, soft, a sound I'd been cataloging without meaning to for 8 months. Then she said Pierce would be in the room tomorrow, a consultant to the client's marketing committee. She'd found out an hour ago from the contact list Paragon had copied him on. I absorbed that. He's going to try to reframe things if the room hesitates, she said. He's good at it. So are we, I looked at her. Don't give him the hesitation. She searched my face for something. Whatever she found, it seemed to be enough. At her car, she kissed me once more, brief, decided, and told me not to disappear into my own head tonight. I told her I didn't do that. She said I absolutely did, and it had a very identifiable look. I conceded the point. She said she'd known about it since February. I was halfway to my own car when my phone lit up again. Unknown number. Ask Thea what she did at Harwick before you trust her tomorrow. I stood on the sidewalk and read it once. Then I called her. She picked up on the second ring. I got another text, I said. Silence. Pull over, I said. I'm coming back. She was leaning against her car when I walked up, arms crossed. I showed her the screen. She read it. Her face went, still in the specific way of someone who has been waiting for a shoe to drop and has finally heard it. He's trying to get in your head before tomorrow, she said. I know. Do you? Thea, I waited until she looked at me directly. You already told me everything. I already believe you. A second text from the same person who clearly has Pierce's contact information does not change anything. She stared at me. That's it? That's it. A long breath. He sent it to make you doubt the pitch, or doubt me. I know exactly what he sent it to do. I kept my voice steady, and tomorrow I'm going to stand next to you in that room. Not in front of you. Next to you. She looked at me for a long moment in the parking garage's flat light. Then she nodded once, decisive, the way she nodded when she'd finished solving something. Okay, she said, tomorrow. Thea arrived before me the next morning, which had never happened before. She was at my desk with 2 coffees. No explanation. She handed one over, fixed my collar with one quick motion like it was a completely normal thing to do, and said Pierce would likely speak up during the data section. Let the data answer him, she said. Don't argue, just redirect to the slide. And if he tries to reframe your section? She looked at me. That's what I'm there for. We walked into North Park Media's conference room at 10. 12 people around the table, the CMO at the head, and 2 seats to her right, Pierce Whitmore. 50s, silver-haired, the specific kind of polish that reads as trustworthy right up until it doesn't. He saw Thea and smiled the way people smile when they've planned the expression in advance. Thea, good to see you in the room. Pierce. Her voice was level, precise, a scalpel choosing not to cut yet. I didn't realize you'd joined the committee. Just supporting where I can. His eyes moved to me. The analyst, I assume. Silas Horn. I didn't extend my hand. He hadn't offered his. Thea opened the presentation without ceremony. Your audience isn't disengaged, she said. They're overmanaged. Every touchpoint in your current funnel tells them what to think before they've decided if they care. We're going to show you what happens when you stop predicting their response and start leaving room for it. The room shifted, that lean-forward quality that can't be manufactured, pens going still, eyes moving to the screen instead of phones. She handed it to me with a glance. Your turn. I walked them through the data without hiding inside it. Where audiences stopped, where they stayed, what language accelerated momentum, and what killed it in the first 12 seconds. At one point, I made a dry remark about engagement rates and emotional investment being more correlated than most quarterly reports wanted to admit, and the CMA, a direct, sharp woman, named Daniela Cruz, laughed in the unguarded way. People laugh when something is simply true. Then Pierce raised his hand. "This is compelling," he said, in the tone of a man finding it something else entirely. "But I've seen Thea's approach over-prioritize principle in ways that end up costing clients. I'd want to understand the risk tolerance here." "The measurements on the slide," I said. He looked at me. "Page 9, I clicked. "Brands that reduced directive language in the early funnel and replaced it with open-loop content saw a 31% lift in completion rates across a 6-month period. That's not a philosophy, that's a figure." Pierce smiled. "Data reflects the questions you choose to ask." Thea turned to him without any hurry at all. "So does doubt." A beat of quiet. "I've seen this type of strategy create short-term lift that doesn't hold," Pierce said, addressing the table rather than her. "Emotion-forward content is difficult to scale." "Respect isn't emotion-forward," Thea said calmly. "It's structural. When your content assumes the audience needs to be managed, the audience stops moving. When it assumes the audience is capable of arriving on their own terms, they complete the journey." She advanced to the next slide. "These are North Park's own user exit surveys from the last 8 months. The word appearing most frequently in dropout comments is patronizing. That data point didn't come from us. It came from your audience." Daniela Cruz looked at the slide. Then she looked at Pierce. "Do you have an alternative reading of those surveys?" she asked. Pierce did not answer immediately. "Because what I'm looking at," Daniela said, tapping the table lightly, "is a specific problem with a specific measurement attached to a specific solution. If you have a different interpretation of the same data, I'd genuinely like to hear it." Pierce did not have a different interpretation. The room moved on. By the close, Daniela had asked 2 questions about implementation timeline, which is the kind of question clients ask only when they've already made up their minds. We signed the contract at noon. At 12:15, Thea and I were alone in the elevator going down. She faced forward. I faced forward. Then she made a sound. Exhale, relief, something between the two, and rested the back of her head briefly against the wall. "We did it," she said. "You did most of it. The data did most of it. The data doesn't do anything until someone builds the room around it." She turned her head. Her eyes were bright in a way I hadn't seen before. Genuine, unguarded, not performance, just her surprised by how much the relief was hitting. I offered my hand. She looked at it, then at me, then she took it and stepped into my side, and I put my arm around her. And we rode the rest of the way down like 2 people who had sprinted for 5 hours and were only now remembering to breathe. That afternoon, she texted Paragon. She called me right after. I turned it down. I didn't speak for a second. "Are you sure?" "I've been sure since the parking garage," she said. "I just needed to get through today." A pause. "And I want to be clear. I'm not turning it down because of you." "I know. I'm turning it down because Pierce has a consulting relationship there, and I am done performing in rooms where his version of my professional history carries any weight." Her voice was clear, settled. "I like Austin. I like Signal. I like what I'm building here. I'm part of what you're building." "You are, Queeter. That's real. It's just not the whole reason." I stayed on the phone longer than made sense. At one point, she told me the reason she'd always paused in my doorway was that she'd been deciding whether the conversation she wanted to have was professional enough to justify the visit. I told her that was the most Thea thing I'd ever heard. She called me insufferable. I took it as a compliment. She said she knew. That was 14 months ago. Thea's desk is still across the office from mine because Ramona has opinions about productivity optics and we have learned to respect them during business hours. Signal brought on 3 new clients in the months after North Park. Tanner came back from San Antonio, expressed zero surprise about us, and immediately lobbied for a double dinner that we eventually agreed to. Pierce sent one email, about 3 months after the pitch. Thea forwarded it to me without comment. I forwarded it to Ramona. Ramona handled it the way Ramona handles most things, with efficiency and without drama, and we haven't heard from him since. On a Friday evening in December, we were both working late. The office had cleared out. The overhead lights had auto-dimmed and we were each lit by our own monitors. Thea had pushed her chair around to my side of the desk. Not for the first time, not for the last, and was reading over a campaign model on my screen. Your retention variable is wrong, she said. My retention variable is not wrong. It's missing something. What? She looked at me sideways. Trust. When an audience believes the content isn't trying to extract something from them, they come back. That's not qualitative. That's measurable if you track return rate against tone markers. I looked at the model. Then I looked at her. You're right, I said. She turned her head. Our faces were close the way they always were when she pulled her chair over. She didn't move back. I didn't either. I'm always right, she said. Usually. Always. I fixed the variable. She watched my hands move across the keyboard with the focused attention she gave to anything she considered worth watching. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder, just for a moment, easy and unhurried, like she'd long since decided it was allowed, and looked at the corrected slide. Better, she said. Agreed. Outside, Austin was doing its usual thing. Traffic, music, the distant smell of someone grilling on a rooftop. Inside, just the hum of the office winding down and both our laptops open side by side. This time, when she leaned over my desk, I did not freeze. I leaned toward her instead.